Hello, my name is Joel Harrison, and this is my final project demo for CS4620, database class at Ohio University. For my final project, I decided to implement a program that would be able to store different recipes into a MySQL database and also retrieve them. So I'll go ahead and show you the main adding functionality. Right now, there's only functionality to add manually, but in the future, I would like to add a feature to just upload a document of the recipe and it would parse through and get all these fields for you, so you won't have to add them. But right now you just have to add them one by one. So you can add the ingredient, the measurement quantity, and the measurement. You can also select add ingredient for another one, say beef and broccoli. Save. Okay, you can add a description of the recipe so that it will be a helpful reminder of, like, whether you liked it or not. Just label it demo test. And you can also add a rating to filter by later. And when you're finished, you can hit the done. It should let you know that it was added to the database. Okay, and the next functionality of this is actually searching for the recipes. So you can either search by recipe name or recipe ingredient. If we add so we can search either beef and broccoli, and it should pop up. But also, if you search just beef, it should pop up as well. And just to show that it is in fact in the database, you can see the recipe table here. It is added to it. And if we search it again, we can also choose to remove it. And it says recipe deleted. And if we refresh this, you can see that it is in fact gone. What else? There is functionality to search by the minimum rate, the rating chosen. So if we want to set a filter and maybe look up chicken, you can search and it will only give you chicken recipes that are rated 5 out of 5. Right now there's only 2 recipes that are 5 out of 5 and only one of them has chicken in it. So this will be the only one that pops up. But if you don't add the filter to it, you get every recipe that has chicken, and you can go through them one by one until there's no more. I also added a filter option for common types of allergens. Right now this is just using a simple list, simple text list of common allergens. So you got fish, dairy, and it just searches the ingredient names, and if any of them match, then it will remove that recipe from the list. So one that I know that I have in here is tilapia, and if we search tilapia, nothing should pop up because we selected that we have a fish allergen. But if we get rid of that and we search tilapia again, tilapia will pop up. So right now that is all I have implemented for this application. I can go ahead and jump into some of the queries to show you how they are made. Okay, and now I am going to show you guys just exactly how the queries were made to the MySQL database and show you how those were done. So for inserting, it basically just got all the inputs from the selected fields and called these functions and did a simple insert into each of the different tables that are required. So there's the overall general recipes table, the recipe ingredients table, which contains all of the different IDs of the ingredients, measurements, and quantities for each recipe. And then there's measurement units, contains all the units, quantity, how much of each unit, and ingredients, the actual names of the ingredients, and it just adds them into the database. Search queries is a little bit more interesting. So the first one I'm going to explain is getting the recipe from the name. I had to make 3 separate helper functions for this one. There's getting ingredients, getting the measurement units, and getting the quantity. This is just taking the recipe name, selecting the different required names. So in this one, it's the ingredient name, the measurement unit name, and the quantity from each of these separate functions. From that table that it is listed in, joining it with the recipe ingredients, which this table contains all the different IDs, so it's being joined with that table, using that ID to join it on, and matching that with the subquery of selecting the ID with the recipe name. So it takes the recipe name, gets the ID, and matches that ID with the recipe ingredients and selects the correct names. And this returns a list of all the ingredients, measurements, and quantities. And then it is all being called from the get recipe from name function. Also selecting the description and rating, as well as those things from the main recipes table, and just matching it, doing a simple match with the name. Okay, so next up I will go ahead and show you the queries for matching via ingredient. So here it's being passed the ingredient name. I had to make a helper function to actually do the querying here. It gets recipe names from the ingredient. This one's a little bit more complicated, but not too much. It selects the recipe name rating from the recipes table, and that is being interjoined with the recipe ingredients table, which contains all the IDs, and it's matching that on via recipe ID. And that is being also interjoined on the ingredients table using the ingredient ID to match those two, and it is selecting that only where the ingredient name equals the past ingredient name. So it's just concatenating the ingredient name into the query. Pretty simple. And this will return a list of all the recipes, all the names of the recipes that contain that ingredient. And that will be used later to get the full recipe with all the measurements, ingredients, and quantities using the list of names. Okay, so next up is the getting recipe names without the allergen, without a specified allergen, that is. So here's the helper function for this that actually does the querying. It selects all the recipe names from recipes where the recipe name is not in this subquery. So this subquery is actually finding a list of recipe names. It's a similar query. It's finding a list of recipe names that it matches the ingredient with the specified allergen. So it finds all the recipes that have this allergen, and then we're doing a not in. So it's going to exclude any recipe names that have that allergen, and that is going to be returned into this main runner function and being compared with the list of ingredients. So it's using both the previously defined functions, getting recipes by names and getting recipes by ingredients, and it's going to compare these two lists and take out any recipes that basically have the allergen. And this is going to return basically all the recipes that are allergen free. Okay. The next one that I had to implement was a rating filter. So this is using both the ingredient name and a rating. Um, so it's pretty similar to the previous one where it's getting the ingredient with two inner joins using the recipe ingredients table and the ingredients table, matching same IDs. The only difference is it is also saying and check if the rating is greater than or equal to the minimum rating, which is the variable that was passed in as the minimum rating that the user would like to see. And it uses this helper function inside of here to actually get all of the data. Okay, and next it had to get all the IDs for deleting. I ended up making each of my deletes a separate function where it's actually just matching, it's deleting each thing by the ID. So I had to make a function to actually get these IDs to pass into the deletes so that it could be deleted properly. With this, I had basically 4 helper functions to do this. One to get the recipe ID is the main one because that is used for each of the other ones. That is just taking the recipe name, getting the recipe ID matching by name, and then that ID will be passed into these helper functions and select just either the ingredient IDs, the measurement IDs, or the measurement quantity IDs, and returning each of those as a list to be used to delete from the database. So that's it for the queries. That completely deletes everything and searches and adding to the database. That's all the functionality I have implemented so far. Thank you so much for watching this video and hope you have a great one.